let public people will catch up here in a little while. Well, welcome everybody. This is part two of our two-part series on generational distinction. The first part was in July when we focused on cultural awareness, and we invited a panel of four: a baby boomer, Generation X, a millennial, and Generation Z. And it was quite an interesting seminar because what we discovered different aspects of their generational understanding, and what they have planned for their lives. Of course, part two, which is today, is on cultural competency, and it is basically it's a topic where you really recognize how competent you are in understanding the multicultural workforce, the multiracial aspect of our lives today in the United States. It's not too obvious that America's workforce is multiracial and multicultural, and to bring an understanding on the set of distinctive nationalities and skills, whether we know that or not. I mean, individually, all of you do have that. And if you think of your own personal and professional skills and experiences, and how well is your level of awareness and understanding of the cultural dynamics in the workforce, or even if you're working offline, on cue as we're doing today. Of course, you certainly could apply your unconscious bias, given that, and also your unconscious or explicit bias. So we decided to assemble a panel of professionals, and Christine will introduce them: Eric Flowers, Thomas Matthews, and Lorna Devera, on their personal and professional proficiency of being aware of your own cultural competency in their own workplace, regarding race, nationality, ethnicity, understanding of the language, religion, sexual orientation, and just about their personal attention to respecting that dynamic, and providing some sort of humility. Now, this seminar is open to non-attribution, was open and also non-attribution. So we will record the session and archive it on the PPOM website resources page. So without further ado, let me turn it to Christine.
Thank you, General Taguba. It's my pleasure to introduce our panel members today: Mr. Eric Flowers, Ms. Lorna May Devera, and Mr. Thomas Matthews. And I will read their quick bio before we start. Mr. Eric Flowers. Eric is a visionary leader with over 30 years management and leadership experience in the public, profit, and nonprofit sectors. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel and strategist with over 29 years of military service, 22 from active federal service, and a resume inclusive of formal training and certification in operational planning, public administration, strategic studies, online teaching, and international studies. Eric has advised and consulted senior civilian and uniformed members of the Department of Defense and has created 4 nonprofit organizations and served as the executive director for one of those organizations. He currently serves on 3 nonprofit boards and has held leadership positions on those boards, primarily serving in the capacity of Chief Finance Officer. He holds a Master of Public Administration degree from Georgia State University and a Master of Strategic Studies degree from the U.S. Army War College. His areas of expertise include mentoring, budgeting, fundraising, public speaking, researching, and program development, monitoring, assessment, and evaluation. He is currently a defense contractor and a residential real estate agent and resides in Manassas, Virginia, with his wife and daughter. In addition to his participation with PPOM and chapter president of the DC Metro chapter, he is active in the community through his affiliations with Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, the Rocks, and the Prince William County Community Foundation. Thank you, Eric. Next, we have Ms. Lorna May Devera. Lorna May DeVera works at Leidos as a customer advocacy manager on the U.S. Navy Service Management Integration and Transport Contract. The youngest of 6 girls, Lorna May's parents and sisters emigrated from the Philippines in the 1970s and settled in the San Francisco Bay Area. In 1993, Lorna May enlisted in the U.S. Navy as an undesignated seaman, recruit E1, and in 2008 was direct commissioned as a public affairs officer, PAO. As a PAO, she served overseas in Lome, Togo, and Freetown, Sierra Leone, West Africa in support of Africa Partnership Station, a U.S. Navy humanitarian effort. 2010 through 2011, then served in Helmand Province in Mazar Sharif, southern and northern Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, 2011 to 2012. She retired in 2018 with 24 years of honorable service. Lorna May is a proud PPOM member and is passionate about mentoring the next generation of leaders. Thanks, Lorna May. Next, we have Mr. Thomas Matthews. A Maryland native, Thomas earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and a Bachelor of Arts in Government and Politics from the University of Maryland, College Park in 2017. He supported Department of Health and Human Services contracts as a security auditor, where he assessed technical, operational, management, and privacy controls to verify compliance for low and moderate impact systems. Additionally, he earned industry-leading cybersecurity certifications, ISC2 Certified Information Systems Security Professional, and CompTIA Security Plus. Thomas pursued an MS in Cybersecurity Policy and Risk Management from the University of New Hampshire at Manchester to strengthen policy development and risk management skills that address the intersection of technology, policy, and people. His graduate research proposed risk management recommendations that lay residential users can implement to manage security and privacy risk associated with intelligent voice assistant, IVA, devices in their personal living spaces. He worked as a cybersecurity technical project manager at the federal client site, the U.S. House of Representatives, where he managed various cybersecurity initiatives across the House while strengthening project management and communication skills. Currently, Thomas is a postgraduate student at the University of Central Florida, pursuing a PhD in security studies. His research interests are in the intersection of international relations, cybersecurity, and the role of artificial intelligence, AI. He actively volunteers with Asian and Pacific American Institute for Congressional Study, APACS, to promote Asian American and Pacific Islander participation and representation at all levels of the government, an InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, IV, to mentor college students on topics of faith and career. In his free time, Thomas enjoys reading books on philosophy, astronomy, and fantasy, playing the piano, running, and spending time with family and friends. Oh, that's an awesome resume. Welcome to Thomas. All right, now that you've gotten to know a little bit about our panel members, I'll ask our panelists a series of questions. And we'll just go in order with Eric, then Lorna May, and then Thomas. All right, our first question to Eric. How aware are you of your cultural competency at your workplace or social circle? And by cultural competence, we mean being aware of your cultural beliefs and values and how they are different from other cultures.
Thanks, Christine. So from my personal perspective, I'm very aware of it. It's something that has always had to my indoctrination or getting comfortable in the workplace from the military perspective. I needed to always be aware of who I was and what I represented to, for lack of better words. And at the same time, I had to be cognizant of my surroundings in terms of my coworkers and their respective backgrounds and what they were used to, or what they had been exposed to throughout their years. And, I think back to when I was in college, there were many times when I knew I was placed in situations where some of my classmates did not have good cultural awareness. They had only got exposure to different cultures through TV. And there was an unexpected or implied expectation, I think, for me to not necessarily conform to what they had seen on TV or heard on the radio and whatnot, but to be able to break down pre-existing stereotypes and be able to give them an opportunity to be able to learn about me and me be able to share with them who I was and what I represented. I never attempted to approach any situation as I were the spokesperson or the ideal example for Black America, but I did recognize that I was an opportunity for people to find out a little bit more about Black people. And I never wanted to give them the impression that whatever I said, it was me speaking on behalf of the entire Black population in America, but needed to give them an opportunity to recognize that since we're not a monolithic ethnicity, that the ideas that I shared were worthy of being discussed and being contemplated, and for them to be able to hopefully get the courage and the intellectual curiosity to be able to learn a little bit more about different races or ethnicities. So I feel like I always had to go into each situation with an unexpected expectation of being able to be willing to talk to folks, to give them a chance to learn more about Blacks. And then at the same time, what I needed to make sure that I did was to ensure that I was open-minded and wanted and took the opportunities to learn more about the different races and ethnicities that I was exposed to within that environment.
Thank you, Eric. We're going to go to Lorna May with the same question. How aware are you of your cultural competency at your workplace or social circle?
Well, thanks for having me today, General Taguba and Christina. It's nice to see everybody. I think I'm aware of it every day. I think it's pointed out every day in the sense, not only like I think cultural is inclusive, right, of age and upbringing. Um, I think with the job that I have now, I do ruffle feathers every day, all the time, and then at the end, I'm always asking, "Why? Why am I the one to always have to turn a rock upside down?" And I realize that it has a lot to do with my upbringing. I as my brief bio said, daughter of immigrants, immigrants had to really struggle and have the survival mentality to make a better life for not only themselves, but also their children. And I noticed that I do bring that to my work. And so the cultural differences, my awareness is people actually ask, um, why do I care? Why do I work so hard? Um, and I even had somebody say, I worry about your health, I don't want you to have a stroke. And I just it's ironic to me because I know male counterparts who and cultural, I would say my upbringing, I spent 24 years in the Navy, and I think that's a cultural play on me too when you compare it to the other services. Um, I when males act or behave in the same manner, I really don't see anybody calling them out. But yeah, I get called out one-on-one every single time. And with me, I don't dwell on things. It goes in one ear and out the other. So whether I mean, I've never changed. I take everything into consideration, and if it makes valid sense, then yes, I will modify my behavior. But in the most part, you know, the cultural awareness is just there, whether I am self-aware or whether it's pointed out to me. Um, so fortunately, my upbringing I loved because it was just so diverse. I grew up in a neighborhood where my neighbors were Puerto Rican, Mexican, Russian, Afghan, um, even Caucasian. So I was able to really just have that foundation of embracing everybody's differences in their food and their music and their language. So it's really no different for me as an adult in the workplace until it's pointed out to me and that I'm different and that I'm not a conformist and I'm the one that needs to play nice. So that's that's how I identify with the cultural differences, not only my gender, my ethnicity, my race, my military background, my age, because I do believe I am one of the younger people on this specific contract. I'm one of the newer ones, the fresher ones. So with my Navy upbringing, it was like question everything, challenge everything, don't conform, understand the why, and then the PAO training, right? Ask the who, what, when, where, and why. So I could see and understand how I am a troublemaker, but it's only for the greater good. And so for me, cultural is I think it's for me, I just see it as an inclusive of everything, just not the color of my skin, my upbringing, and my gender. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I like the good trouble that you get into. All right, we're gonna head over to Thomas and the same question. How aware are you of your cultural competency at your workplace or social circle?
Yeah, thank you, General Taguba, for this opportunity and Christine for the intro. I suppose growing up as a first gen um, and the son of immigrants as well, very aware of the different cultures that were around me. Thinking back to primary education, high school, the vast amount of people that I interacted with, that I studied with, and being able to find that balance between the eastern part of the culture that my parents were trying to instill and preserve in us in a new country, as well as the western part where I'm being indoctrinated in school, in society, etc. Additionally, having an opportunity to grow up in a multi-ethnic church where there were a wide array of people, from a lot of people from Africa, South America, Central America, Caribbean islands, and getting that exposure to the various different cultures definitely helped to help me appreciate the beauty of various different cultures, languages. I remember in college, I was part of an organization that was predominantly East Asian, and so I got like a really good intro into East Asian culture. Really learned a lot about the food, the language, et cetera, et cetera. But it was also nice to teach them about the South Asian culture as well, and try to teach them about the different things that I grew up with, such as, our foods, how we respect elders, how that looks like in our home, in our society, if you will. So I would say very aware of the various different cultures, and kind of like what Lorna May was saying, culture is not just bound by country, by ethnicity, but also the age, being able to pass across those generations to connect with different people as well has been wonderful. A Bible study that I was a part of back in Maryland, I was the youngest person and the oldest person there was 86. And being in that environment, learning from that cross-generational bridge was also a good opportunity. Again, helping me respect the vastness of what cultural competency is.
Thank you. And it sounds like you've been in a lot of diverse environments, so really good upbringing. All right, we're going to go back to Eric with the second question. And the second one is, how would you recommend approaching your supervisor or a colleague or subordinates regarding their nationality, background, or skills without the risk of being intrusive?
One of the things that I think is value to any organization is for people to be able to communicate with one another in an open and I would say confident manner. And so the thing that I would do to recommend that type of opportunity or to be able to take advantage of that opportunity is just simply, speak to people as people. And sometimes within the military environment, there's this, I would say, a barrier that exists because you've got the senior officer or senior service member and a subordinate service member. And so there's a little bit of intimidation that occurs. And so what I've had to do in the past is to encourage people to just talk to one another as people. And I think when we encourage dialogue that focuses on an individual and not necessarily their standing within a company, that some good, solid communication can occur. And I would also encourage them to look at it from a two-way street perspective. And it's not just communicating ideas and thoughts from one's perspective, but be willing to receive what they hear or what they receive back from the person that they're talking to. So the basic guidance I would give is to speak to the individual as a person, not necessarily their standing. And then at the same time, be open-minded and not, I would say, judgmental in what you receive back in return.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I agree with you. Communications is really key in any environment. How about we go to Thomas next? So, Thomas, how would you recommend approaching your supervisor, colleague, or subordinates regarding their nationality, background, or skills without the risk of being intrusive?
I would piggyback off of what Eric was saying and emphasize the human person component of the individual. Working I guess the most recent job that I had was working as a project manager at the House of Representatives. And the team that we had was extremely diverse, not just in race, ethnicity, but also in age, in upbringing, in background, etc. And something that that I had as a project manager, I definitely had opportunities to work with people who were like much older than me, who knew things much more than I did. And so for me, a lot of imposter syndrome initially when it came to understanding how to manage, how to lead a team, etc. And there were times when there were disagreements. There were times when you had to approach people about certain issues, and I had to do that. And of course, because of my age, because of my experience, I didn't feel like I could do it. But I remember what our CISO was saying, remove the rank and ask yourself, will people still follow you? Remove the title and ask yourself, will people still follow you? And that to me stood out. And on top of that, I had really good mentors around me, older, younger, who mentored me and taught me how I can be a better project manager, how I can be a better leader, how I can assert while being respectful of, in this case, people's experience, people's knowledge, to, of course, recognize that I may not be the smartest person. I may not know everything about the system, about the different components, but at the very end, the goal that we have is to get the project done to protect the house. And so, with that in mind, respecting the individual, knowing who they are, trying not to get too emotional, but trying to speak to them as a person would definitely be, I guess, a good approach.
Oh, thank you. That was really helpful with the leading with respect and understanding, but also competence. Thank you again. All right, we'll go to Lorna May with the same question. How would you recommend approaching your supervisor, colleague, or subordinates regarding their nationality, background, and skills without the risk of being intrusive?
I I don't know if I have or would go to a supervisor, colleague, or subordinate about their nationality or background. I I don't I mean, I'm gonna put that on pause, but I will address the skills without sounding without skills without the risk of being intrusive. As a leader, I've had the opportunity to be one in both uniform and non-uniform, and I'm just very direct, and I think the way we all we all judge whether we admit it or not, and we all try and work around it by saying, "Let's not have unconscious bias," but my reality is I just accept that, "Hey, we're gonna be biased one way or the other." So I think my appearance worked both ways. I get judged as, an Asian woman. I'm petite. I'm 4'11". I'm either so in my experience, I think I'm judged in 2 ways. One, I'm a pushover. I'm soft. I'm going to be quiet. And then the reality is once I'm approached, and as I just briefly described at my work, I have no problem going guns blazing with my questions. So when it comes to leading and asking skills without being intrusive, I'm just very direct, like, okay, great, you're on my team. So what do you want? Do you want a promotion? Do you just want to stay a technician? What do you see for yourself? In uniform is, if they were petty, if they were non-commissioned officers, the goal, the questions would be, what do you want? You want to make your khakis? Do you want to make chief? Do you want to be an officer? So that I think cuts through the line of the skill set. What do you have? What do you want? Where do you want to go with it? Um, and I think my leadership style is very nurturing, and I do establish trust and humor and empathy and foundation. I'm inclusive of family. I do ask about, spouses and children to leverage building that relationship so that they are able to trust me to tell me what their skills are, what they're confident in, what they're not, and how as a leader, or supervisor, manager can help them develop that skill set so that they can have job satisfaction with, you know, being comfortable with where they are or gaining that additional skill set to achieve that next pay grade, rank, title, promotion. Um, so so that's pretty much how I address the skill set. I'm just direct. But when it comes to the nationality or background, I don't think that's necessarily something I would ask. I it especially my role today. Um, but I know in the Navy when I was in a specific role doing Asian American outreach, um, I was, you know, I my goal was to brand the US Navy and the Asian Pacific American population. So my approach is just direct. Whether I needed a guest speaker, I needed junior officers to be in attendance because we needed bodies to listen to these senior officers' speeches. I would just be so bold and blatant, like, oh, okay, you're coming across as Asian, you're gonna sign up for this event and you're gonna be there. And they'd laugh and they'd be at my event. So, but I think in the corporate world, I would have to have a reason to ask those questions. And then I think I would tie it around the why I'm asking them about their nationality or background. Is there an event coming, that I need a speaker. I don't know how to quite answer that because I don't think I've been put in that situation to have to ask that question. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I thought that was a really insightful answer because a lot of managers and leaders and supervisors usually don't ask that directly. It usually comes out in conversation or willingly from the, person themselves. So I appreciate you explaining that, that's how you deal with it. Because I think some people, they feel that they would have to ask that. There's others that are more open to it, and that's their first thing that they ask because there aren't a lot of Asian Americans in the military. So a lot of times when they try to get common ground, their first thing is, "What nationality are you?" I think that applies a lot in the military, but I do agree in a corporate or leadership setting, some leaders, that's not something that they would outright ask, especially now that there's hiring where you're trying to not show that. So they would mask it, so to say. And also in our military promotion and selection boards, nationality, those type of things, and that type of background is masked as well.
I will say you are right. So I was looking at it one way, as in how do I approach it? But
Mhm.
yes, there isn't a time where when there is an opportunity for someone to ask about my race and my ethnicity, it is asked. I wasn't necessarily thinking that way, but yes, I am asked pretty much 80% of the time.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. We're gonna head over to Eric again. Hi, Eric. So
What's going on?
I know. Like, yeah, I'm enjoying hearing your answers. So Eric, are there any training sessions in your workplace that encourage diversity, especially regarding cultural competency?
Well, if we were in a rapid fire session, my answer would be quick to save time. And I'll initially answer the question by saying no. However, what I would like to do is to expound a little bit on some personal thoughts that I have on the utility of it, particularly within my profession. I still dabble a little bit with the profession of arms. And so, from my personal perspective, I'm not necessarily sure if there's a real need to have set aside sessions that talk about diversity training, because at the end of the day, what we all have to be about the business of in my profession is dealing with each other with respect. And respect should come, I feel, and maybe idealistic to say so, but it should just come because of the fact that we're all members of the profession of arms. And if we look at life situations from a different perspective based off of our cultural upbringing, that is just the nature of life. But it should not factor into the way that we interact and engage with one another. We should all look at each other and deal with each other with respect. And so to have a separate training that talks about diversity kind of, to me, undermines the importance of really focusing in on diversity. Excuse me, on just professionalism and respect. So if there were to be any type of specialized diversity or cultural competence training, I think it would be something that should be offered as just a way of enhancing an individual's own professional development. There are some things that could be shared anecdotally or informally about some things to think about. So one of the things that I would say if I were somewhere drinking, or not drinking, but having a social event and just socializing with folks. And I would, if they wanted to know, if, let's say, for instance, if I had an individual that was working with young lieutenants, Army lieutenants that were coming into the service right after their commissioning. And this individual, my colleague, had some just questions on, well, how do I, how can I develop a good rapport with, the Black officers that are coming in? one of the things that I would share with them, and I wouldn't say that this would be part of any type of formal curriculum, but I would say, well, one thing that would be helpful that could go a long way in establishing good rapport with your younger Black officers is to find out whether or not they're part of a fraternity. Because within the Black community, the Greek fraternities, although everyone does not join a Greek fraternity, but for those individuals that do join a Greek fraternity, that's an important aspect of their life. They may not necessarily cling to it throughout the entirety of their life, but at some point in time where there's some relevance to their life and to their existence from the Black fraternity. So if you want to be able to have a little bit of cultural competence that goes beyond your comfort level, get to learn about the 9 Black fraternities and sororities. Because if one of your young officers is a member of one of those organizations, you can go you can earn a lot of idiosyncrasy credits by knowing about a little bit about those organizations, and that helps to develop a sense of trust and a sense of concern or perceived concern about that individual. And so there are examples like that I think exist throughout every ethnicity and race that could be shared in an informal fashion. But to be able to develop a comprehensive and meaningful diversity or cultural competence type of training with the end state of it being able to help folks be able to interact with one another on a cultural level. I'm not sure if that's something that's first of all even attainable, and at the same time even desirable. I think the main thing is that we need to really focus in on being professionals and recognizing that not everyone is cut from the same cloth, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we all have a mission or job to accomplish. And the best way to do that is to have a mutual respect for one another, notwithstanding their cultural or ethnic background.
Thank you, Eric, for your perspectives. Okay, how about we go to Lord Domain next? The same question, are there any training sessions in your workplace that encourage diversity, especially on cultural competency?
Yes. So, as you mentioned in my bio, I do work for a company called Leidos, and I'm not getting paid to say this, but I genuinely do love my employer. And I can say that since I've had 2 other employers since retiring from the Navy, so I do have something to compare them to. And I really love the culture that they've established where they really do the balance of, yes, they need it's a business, but you do not feel like a number. So with that said, I don't necessarily know if this is training, but I considered it to be part of training because at Leidos, I do give them an A plus enterprise wide for having 9 employee resource groups so that employees have a way to feel connected to other teammates across the country, not only in the departments that they work in, um, but they uh they have these 9 employee resource groups where people can join and have conversations, as I said, to feel connected and to talk about whatever they want to talk about. So as an example, I will give you the wait. Oh, so sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Can you repeat that question, Christine?
Oh, yeah, of course. And you were talking about the employee resource groups at your work at Leidos and how they're very helpful. But are there any training sessions in your workplace that encourage diversity, especially on cultural competency?
Yeah, so not I don't know about specifically cultural competency, but they do talk about we do have training when it comes to like what Eric had mentioned, the respect and inclusion and how you can be a better person with thinking outside the box, being inclusive. And our 9 ERGs help support that because it brings awareness. If I were to dial into there is an Asian American one, but if I were to dial into the 8 other ones, I would learn something more. So for example, the African American ERG hosted a lunch and learn around Juneteenth. And the leaders that were hosting the Juneteenth panel, they were just so excited because they saw other people that didn't look like them join in. And then the others, who weren't African Americans were asking these questions. And they're like, we've never heard of Juneteenth. And it just, so it wasn't a formal training. It was something that the employees did on their own. And that really brought me joy in the sense everybody's doing this on their own time at lunch to learn about not only this holiday, how significant it is, but then they had the opportunity to meet other teammates across the company, which I think makes it for a stronger, as we would say in the military, esprit de corps kind of thing. So that's one example of how I know my company, whether it's informal or formal training, that was training that we were doing on each other, and that was thanks to that African American ERG session.
Well, that's interesting to hear too, and nice to know that the different ERGs are doing a lot of cultural and diverse celebrations. Oh, so Mike Iguchi has a question for you, Lorna May. What business unit are you with at Leidos?
I am with, oh, this is a pop quiz. I am with the defense group. There are other business groups such as health and civil and intelligence. And I am on the defense team in the enterprise cyber solutions group. And then when you drill down, I'm on the US Navy contract that is providing the networks to the Navy, and network IT networks is inclusive of the VoIP, the email, and BTC and print.
Hi, Mike. Do you work with Leidos and trying to maybe connect with Lorna May?
Hi, no. I was just, so it's a big company, and so sometimes the culture is different in the different business units, and so I was just interested to see which business unit at Leidos she was with.
So I agree with that because and I was thinking that after the fact. So even the and so there Leidos did do an employee survey not long ago, and the feedback returned saying that there are still some employees who don't feel connected to the company. So when I read that, my response is, as an employer, I know I see all these emails that Leidos is pushing out saying, there's a heart walk, there's this community service at the food bank, there's the ERGs, there's these, panels, where leaders, these executive leaders are spending their time on how they started out at, maybe as a service desk agent, and now they're an executive vice president. So there are the resources, but yes, there can be that disconnect. Is the manager encouraging it, or is the manager discouraging it, saying, you need to work on that VIP ticket. You don't have time to dial into that VIP lunch and learn. Or is that one employee just going to be the one that's always going to complain, I don't feel connected to Leidos? It's kind of like that saying, you could lead a horse to water, but is that horse going to drink it? So for me, it is 50-50. And comparing it to the Navy, and somebody would say, oh, the Navy, is terrible. Yeah, there are pockets of the Navy that are terrible. There's even different designators that are better than others, whether it's aviation, submarine, surface warfare officer. So I agree that, it just, so Leidos as a whole, I believe, is doing the best that they can. But whether that trickles down, a whole different ballgame, to your point, Mike.
Thanks, Mike, for that question. Thanks, Lorna May. Oh, we'll go over to Thomas next. Same question, Thomas. Are there any training sessions in your workplace or previous workplace that encourage diversity, especially on cultural competency?
Speaking, I'm a contractor, so speaking for the house, I know I can't really speak much for the house. I do know that they are making strides in that area. But speaking specifically for my federal contracting company, yes, we did have a diversity training, not specifically, not really like a separate cultural competency training per se, but elements of it was embedded into the training. That said, one thing that I'll note about the contracting company, one thing that they did was take an effort to be more diverse in their hiring process, and kind of diversify their workforce. And so a lot of the people that were hired on, including myself, we all look very different. And it's not just, again, in the area of race and ethnicity, but also in age and experience, knowledge, skill sets, etc., which I think has helped the company in many ways to not only do good work at the house, but also grow as a company, because you get variety of knowledge, variety of experience, and it helps us. When I speak specifically about the house, it helps us create a really strong force there to protect the house, essentially. That said, I think personally for me, I think I have an issue with the word training. I recently had to do training for my company, and it was a drag, to be honest. I had to do a cybersecurity awareness training because it was renewing again. And as much as I enjoy it, it was still a very challenging thing, because at the end of the day, who likes training? And so I think when it comes to cultural competency, I liked what Mr. Eric was saying about us being professional about it. Just learn to respect your neighbor and be kind and all that. But I think in a broken world, where there will always be issues, there has to be some form of teaching people about the different cultures that surround us and helping us be more adept, more understanding of different people. And so rather than maybe calling it training, maybe changing the word up and calling it immersion or something could help get people to be more excited about it. And something that comes to mind is something that we did when I was in college. As I mentioned, I was with an organization that was predominantly Asian, East Asian. And so something that our staff leader decided to do was encourage specifically the leadership group to immerse themselves in different cultures. So across the leadership team, of course, we were predominantly Chinese and Korean American, but we also had people from the Caribbean islands, people from India, and various different backgrounds, specifically in Christianity. And so one thing that he encouraged everyone to do was check out somebody else's church, see how different people worship, see what they do, and maybe that'll help you understand the culture of the organization, culture of your fellow neighbor, and that'll make you more of a better leader for the organization. And I think that exercise really encouraged a lot of our leaders to be more open, specifically in the area of Christianity and worship, to just learn how everybody does things differently. And it helped us as a leadership appreciate everybody else's background.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Great answers. So we have a couple more questions left, and we were going to open it up to the audience. However, I think this is a really good question that we have here in the chat from Denise. And it's also relevant now with a lot of our organizations going to remote or hybrid. And she says, how has remote or hybrid work affected the culture, especially between generations? So Eric says, I think it has increased awareness of the differences in work cultures between the generations. Increased awareness can lead to tighter knit teams. Thanks, Eric. And then also just wanted to open if our other panelists wanted to comment on the impacts of remote or hybrid work.
I think for me and Leidos, I think it has increased productivity in the sense it provides us flexibility to have a work-life balance. So some of you may know, I'm a primary caretaker for my 91-year-old father. So it it allows me to maintain my career and take care of family, and being remote, I don't miss a beat because the laptop follows me wherever I go. So whether I'm in a doctor's waiting room or, God forbid, it has happened in the emergency room, I am always accessible. And I think if I were in a traditional role, I think I would be hurting. Like, how do I do this? The stress would be there. I would have to manage a caretaker. I would have to speak with the caretaker who is at the emergency room with my father on a phone while in a real life meeting. So when it comes to generations, I think my teammate, as Eric pointed out, it is a tight team because everybody, at least within my team, there's 9 of us. We really have each other's back to the point our customers don't miss us. Our customers can trust us to resolve any escalations or issues that they take to us. And being an extrovert, everybody thought I would have a hard time adjusting working at home away from everybody, but it's just the opposite. I have more energy to devote to my own personal happiness, my family's joy and happiness, and my teammates. So it's been beneficial, at least for me, and I think I can safely say for my 8 other teammates as well. Who
Thank
are
you.
older.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really great to hear too. A very nice balance that you have, and also caretaking for your father. So that's a really great plug for hybrid. All right. Would you like to answer that question, Thomas?
Sure, I can add something there as well. I would say that it the hybrid structure has allowed us at least to be more understanding of different people, especially what as the question mentioned, especially with that generational gap. Um, I've been on calls where people are having trouble with their mics or their video cameras, and everybody will sit there patiently now and be understanding and teach whoever it is how to get their mic set up or how to fix their video. Um, and it helps it helps us be more understanding, more patient. Kind of what Lorna May was saying as well. I've been on calls where parents come on with their kids because they're babysitting their kids for that hour or so, and you'll have noise in the background, and everyone's very understanding of it, and we're still getting our work done. And it has helped us be more productive. It has helped us be more efficient. I think it's helped me. I enjoy it, being able to have that work-life balance, being able to step away from work, do something else, come back, pick up where I left off. So I think the remote hybrid has helped us in general.
Thank you, Thomas. I agree. All right, we're going to go to our next question. I'll go to Eric. So do you think there is benefit or value added for being culturally competent personally and professionally?
Yes, I do. And my answer comes from a perspective of being a leader. One of the things that a leader is expected to do or should do is to be able to build teams, especially when there may not necessarily be a lot of indicators that suggest that a team can be formed because of personality differences, work ethic differences, or just a gamut of different things. And so, from a leader's perspective, we should be charged or expected to bring diverse people together. And so, when you have a good handle on cultural competency, you know, or you should have an understanding or a way to facilitate an understanding of how people are different and what makes them tick, or what can help them meld with someone else who's different. And so, from a leader's perspective, you're looking for commonality notwithstanding the differences, and to be able to understand how commonalities can exist, but at the same time coexist with differences in people. You're able to focus in on those commonalities and not let the differences emerge and become a divisive piece within that team building process. So I think it's very important to have that skill set as a leader.
Thank you, Eric. All right, we'll go to Lorna May. Do you think there's a benefit or value added for being culturally competent personally and professionally?
Absolutely, because if you're still working like I am, you're going to be surrounded by people, and people bring in their cultural backgrounds, and you, like Eric said, it's leading a team, it's working with the team, it's being a team player. So you have to have that understanding of that person's background, and and for me, being culturally competent is being empathetic, being patient, being understanding, and being even sometimes nurturing, because some I don't some cultures, even just people in general, just need that extra love and support, right? Depending upon their upbringing, where they come from, where they are now in their life. And so, yes, there is absolutely value added for being culturally competent, because you're accepting a person as a human, and that human has a cultural background.
Oh, yeah, that's a great comment too, and that we as leaders make sure that you're leading people and how you can bring the best out of them, so they're all individuals. So, thank you. And then we'll go to Thomas, and same question. Do you think there is a benefit or value added for being culturally competent personally and professionally?
I'll piggyback off of what everyone has said and said yes, absolutely. As an individual, we are all multifaceted, and there are many different components that make up, the complexity of who we are. I see cultural competency as like a factor in team building, and it only makes a team stronger when there's someone who has an understanding, and can use that to their advantage, if you will. In a team, you have various different types of people. You have the introvert and the extrovert. You have the enthusiastic, the stoic. You have people who are very skilled, and then people who are less skilled. And being able to find that middle ground, being able to work with every single person individually, but also as a team to bring out the best, is something specifically, as both Eric and Lorna May have said, as a leader. And I've had those opportunities as a project manager many times, where I come in, I'm usually the one who is behind, and I have good mentors who are teaching me whatever it is that needs to be done, and then I'm getting the soft skills from someone else so that I can lead effectively. It's vital to our communication. It's vital to to how General Taguba opened, how diverse our workforce is and how globalized we're becoming.
Thank you. I thought that was a really good summary. This is our last panel question before we open it up to the audience. And how about we switch it up? We'll go to Lorna May. All right, so how would you rate the cultural awareness or understanding in your workplace or social setting?
I think I mentioned, I think it's the same responses earlier. I think I give them an A+. I think they really are aware and alert. And then just to flesh out what I started saying earlier about the ERGs, the 9 ERGs that we have isn't just culturally or ethnic or race based, right? So I did mention that Leidos has African American, where we celebrated Juneteenth. They have allies in action for accessibility and abilities. So folks, who are ADA. and they've had guest speakers, and one of the guest speakers they had, didn't have an arm, and he talked about bias. He's like, "No, I didn't lose my arm from the military. I was never even in the military." And so, it was talking about bias, and um I do think that my employer has an amazing outlook on being culturally sensitive and taking care of their employees. I mean, I don't know of any other organization that really invest as much time, money, effort, resources into making sure that their companies feel valued, um, and accepted. And the other one of the other ones that just came out recently too is Leidos has a Pride ERG, and I signed up for all these ERGs just so I can see what's happening across the country. And it surprised me, and I was like, wow, this is awesome that the Pride ERG in San Diego was hosting a queer trivia. And that was so open and forward for me because, again, my military background, right? When I enlisted in the Navy, it was don't ask, don't tell. And so to be here today in 2023, where an employer is hosting a queer trivia, I just think that's amazing. And will I participate in that queer trivia? Yes, because I'm going to learn something new from that. So if I'm going to learn something new from a employer hosted employee resource group event, then yes, I think that my employer does embrace, promote cultural, um, trying to promote cultural competency for its employees.
Oh, great answer. Thank you. And we'll head over to Thomas. How would you rate the cultural awareness or understanding in your workplace or your social setting?
I guess basically what I mentioned before. As a company, we aren't perfect, and there are places where we can learn and always improve. But overall, we're doing really good. Not just only in an initiative that the company took to hire a diverse set of individuals. And that, of course, ranges not just only in race and ethnicity, but also skills, knowledge, experience, but also their willingness to learn, their willingness to be empathetic, be compassionate. And one of the things that I enjoy about my company specifically is we have a good set of leaders as well, who are sympathetic, who understand who we are, and they're not just all one color, they're not just all one experience. They vary in everything, and so that to me is an awesome opportunity to work in a good workplace, and then also working at the house as a contractor. I enjoy it. Our team is diverse in as many ways as you can think. And it's an opportunity for me to learn from really good leaders, learn from really super technical people and not so technical people, and everything in between. So I would rate them pretty well.
Thank you. And last but not least, we'll ask Eric the same question. How would you rate the cultural awareness or understanding in your workplace or your social setting?
I would rate it at my workplace as a minefield waiting to explode. And the reason why I say that is because it's just not something that you really want to get into nowadays. The politicalization of it outside of the Department of Defense has just made it one of those topics that is not a comfortable thing, I think, to talk about, because you don't want to be accused of being woke. And because of that type of, I think, labeling, it precludes folks from really having some heart-to-heart discussions in the workplace. That doesn't mean that when we go out and have social events outside of the work environment, that there's not an opportunity and people don't take advantage of the chance to talk to one another as people. But within the workplace environment, from the Department of Defense perspective, and again, I can't speak for the entirety of DoD, but at least from my small segment that I've been exposed to, it's just one of those things that we don't talk about. And it's just one of those understood type of restraints on our effort to engage with one another. We get along with one another, we have fun, we work together, work collaboratively, effectively, we accomplish the mission. But the talk of cultural competency or diversity and things of that nature, that's just something that we don't talk about. And it's, the old saying, you don't talk about sex, religion, and politics in public. I would say from my workplace, we do that same type of thing. And it doesn't necessarily make us bad, but it does, I think, at the end of the day, limit our ability to be able to learn about one another and to be able to work together as people, because it has gotten so political that the value that comes from open conversation has been stymied a little bit. So I would definitely say I rate it or assess it as walking on eggshells.
Thank you, Eric. That's really interesting insights and perspectives. Yeah, and I think that's an issue that many workplaces are struggling with. But thank you, though, Eric. And that is the last of the panel questions. But at this time, I'd like to open it up to the attendees and audience, because they probably have some really great questions as well. But thank you again, panelists. I'll turn it over to the floor. Are there any questions from the audience, or you would feel more comfortable typing in the chat? Okay, I don't have any.
James has a question. He has his hand raised.
Oh, okay. Go for it, James. Or is it General? Oh, hi, General.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Hi there. Well, first off, thanks, Tony and Jan, for setting this up, and for our panelists, Eric, Lorna May, and Thomas. Reason I beamed in, I think, was highlighted by some of the comments, is that I think we all have a individual responsibility to learn as much as we can in terms of our own cultural competency. And I appreciate that that this panel took it to a very broad perspective. I'm glad Lorna revisited the employee resource groups, because I was also interested in what the groupings were, and I'm glad they included people with some different abilities and pride group and things, because I think just to be focused on ethnicity, I think is limiting. The one comment that I have is about cultural competency today. I think is really different from when maybe General Taguba and I joined the military. Tony, it's been 50 years. And the reason I say that is because I think there was to me a very clear American symbol, I guess. I don't know. It's a European. It's a European period. I mean, and the theme for immigrants was assimilation. In other words, you're different, you're joining something that's very clearly European. And so what you need to do is assimilate. I think we're in a different environment today, demographically. And I think that causes us to kind of bend the curve towards pluralism and understanding that it is not just about immigrants and folks who aren't of European descent assimilating, but trying to figure out, where distinctions are not just nice, but also appropriate, and in many cases, critical to organizations making good decisions, business decisions, people decisions, human capital decisions, social decisions. But so I just want to make that point, but just commend everybody for tuning in on a day off on a Saturday, and for PPOM continuing to share and explore these kinds of very important topics and issues. Thank you.
Thank you, General. And also, I really appreciate it. All the seminars, you always give a very good recap and summary. And I do agree that employee resource groups do bridge that gap. There's more openness to speak on different cultures, just because of, like how Lorna May was saying, get a better understanding of people, because you work with these people on a day in, day out basis. And if you really don't know what may be culturally offensive, or you want to be more educated on those things in which they celebrate and what is important to them, that employee resource group is a great resource for people to use. They could also tune in on all those events, like when I sat in on an LGBTQIA ERG event, it was very eye-opening to see how happy they were to share with people and answer any question that was brought up upon them, because they want to raise awareness and make sure that people know that they are professional, but this is also something that they want to share about themselves. So I think those employee resource groups are very critical, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, and I should have mentioned also, because coming in, I would have thought more along the lines of what Eric talked about in his environment, where it's just something, it's too sensitive to be brought to the fore regularly or in his organization. That's what I would expect from most institutions, that it's kind of this idea of, well, we don't want to go there because we might make a mistake, it's radioactive, people are sensitized, kind of lines have been drawn, we got to avoid those. So I would think that organizational leaders would, if they're very conservative, if they're very cautious, would just kind of leave it alone and just not go there, which is, sadly, what, like I said, I expect what Eric is experiencing is more the norm than what Lorna May be experiencing. Thank you.
Thanks again, sir. We'll see if we have any other questions from the group. Hi, Olivia. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, Olivia. How are you doing?
Good.
So, Olivia, I wanted to do a plug since you're our VP social media, and also if you wanted to add any comment, because it's very important. And I know you brought up a couple of these topics to General Taguba during our board meetings. And I know this is kind of an area of expertise of yours. If you wanted to add anything or make a comment or question before we close.
No, I appreciate everyone taking the time out on a busy afternoon and just, sharing their comments. We did talk about this as a conversation to bring to our space, and I appreciate everyone just sharing their knowledge, their wisdom. And earlier this morning, we had our monthly board meeting, and we talked about how, within our space, within our culture, how much our culture as Asian American plays so much into the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we come into the space as military and civilian, both in uniform, out of uniform, in the workspace, how we interact as family members. And I think it's important that we continuously share. As Lorna May was talking, I'm like over here, you can't see me, I'm like head bobbing because I identify so much with her personality, not only because, obviously being Asian American, but also being a public affairs officer, our personality. And I think it's so important to be, authentically you every single day, show up as yourself and having the courage to be yourself and to express who you are. And I think that's something that culturally we don't do as people, as Asian American, because our culture isn't like that. We are the people that show up, work hard, put our heads down, and we assimilate, like that was said earlier. And I think we have to kind of break that norm and really be a little different and show ourselves and be ourselves. And I know that's a little hard, and I say that knowing that that's hard, as I am 2 years removed from the uniform and trying to break norms. I just came back from a pageant and breaking, beauty standards, because Asian Americans aren't necessarily the beauty standards. So something to just to ponder and think of as we are trying to come into the workspace, be ourselves, and change the way people perceive us. So thanks again.
Thanks, Olivia, for your insights. It's really, as always, very, very helpful for the group. All right, so before we log off, I wanted to give an opportunity one more time if our panelists had any closing comments before we say farewell. All right, so I just wanted to let you know that General Taguba sends his very best regards to everyone. He had to attend another commitment in Gaithersburg, Maryland, but I appreciate the audience also chiming in on some great questions, the panelists sharing their experience, expertise, and points of view. I think it was a very helpful session as always. So we look forward to seeing you again in our next session, and also hopefully at our PPOM annual meeting. So thank you again, Juan, too, for making sure that this recording is happening.
When's the annual meeting?
October.
Is it the same week as the AUSA?
October 8th. It's on my calendar because I'm flying in from San Francisco for it.
Oh, nice. I look forward to seeing you, Lorna May, the 8th of October.
Okay.
The week, yes, the week of the AUSA conference.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
Wonderful. We look forward to seeing those that can attend. And again, I appreciate everybody's attention, expertise, and great insights. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.